Hey guys, and welcome to Worship Team Training. This is the first lesson in our series, and we're going to be talking about drawing others to Jesus. But before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Joel.
My name's Ashton.
And we're going to be leading you through this 3-lesson series. So, like I said, the first thing that we need to understand is that we need to draw others to Jesus as we lead worship from the stage. So Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith." So one of the biggest struggles that we're going to go through as worship leaders is that we draw the attention to ourselves and not to Jesus. So we're going to look at a few points on how we can make sure that we're drawing the attention to Jesus, and Ashton's going to give us the first point.
Okay, so our first point today is that Jesus is the focus and not us. The book of Colossians in the Bible makes it clear that Jesus is the focus of all of history. He's the focal point of everything that was and is and will be. And so let's take a look at that in Colossians 1, 15 through 17. It says, "Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. For through him God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see and the things we can't see, such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all creation together." So clearly, Jesus is to be glorified and exalted over all creation. It's easy for us as humans to sometimes want to elevate ourselves and make ourselves look great. And that's called pride, when we want to do things our way versus God's way. John the Baptist was a great example of turning things away from himself and turning the focus onto Jesus. The whole concept of, I must become lesser so that he will become greater. I must diminish so that he must increase. And that's our perspective as worship leaders, is that we take any attention that's directed to us and we immediately reflect it onto Jesus, because he alone is worthy of worship.
So the second thing that we need to understand in drawing others to Jesus is that worship is a response to God. So when we encounter the truth of who Jesus is and what he's done for us, that's going to evoke a response in our life, and that natural response is going to be in worship. So our goal as a worship leader, and this includes everyone on the stage, is to help people to respond to what Jesus has done for them. And God is going to continue to do amazing things in our lives, and so it should be our goal in our personal lives and for the people that we're leading in worship to help them to understand, yes, this God is going to continue to be faithful, and he's going to continue to be worthy of our worship. It says in Isaiah 25 verse 1, "O Lord, I will honor and praise your name, for you are my God. You do such wonderful things. You planned them long ago, and now you have accomplished them."
So our next point that we're going to be talking about is cultivating a welcoming environment. The reason that this is such an important thing in our services is that it's easy sometimes to make our service about ourselves as Christians, as people who already know Christ. The Bible's very clear that we're supposed to keep the outsider in mind whenever we attend a worship service, whenever we gather to worship together. And the reason that this is so important is because what is on God's heart is to reach the world with the good news, with the gospel. The world will know us by our love, you know. That's what Christians are known by and known for, and we should be known for, is our love for each other, our love for God, this love that is so different than everything that the world sees around them. When we're coming into our services, the best and most loving thing that we can do for somebody is actually pointing them to the cross and what Jesus did on the cross, because that's where we see God's love meet humanity in a profound way, is the work of the cross and what Jesus accomplished for us there to defeat sin. And so that's important, that's paramount that we focus on that and that we draw people to the work of the cross so that they can see God's love and his grace found in the person of Jesus. as we're doing this, it's very important that we remember to put ourselves in the shoes of the visitor, the person that might be attending for the first time. In other words, ask ourselves questions like, how would I see this for the first time if I were walking through these doors and this is my first Sunday here? Would I think that this element is strange, or maybe this thing that was done was kind of bizarre? How am I going to understand this? And as we do that, we're going to be able to engage with people and to create that welcoming environment of pointing them to the love of God as seen in the work of Jesus on the cross. So Colossians 4:4-6 says this, "Pray that I will proclaim this message clearly as I should. Live wisely among those who are not believers, and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive, so that you will have the right response for everyone." So once again, let's remember that as we're up there on stage leading worship, whether you're the worship leader, the drummer, the electric guitarist, a blending vocalist, whatever that looks like, remember that you are in one of the most visible roles for your church up on that stage. And it's so important that we can point people to the cross, to Jesus, and display the love of God that we see there in that place.
So the last point in this lesson that we want to understand in order to draw others to Jesus is that we need to minimize potential confusion. So as Ashton said, when we're cultivating a welcoming environment, one thing that we want to do is we want to put ourselves in another person's shoes and think to yourself, is anything that I'm doing here, would this be confusing or weird to an outsider? So I want to read you a verse from 1 Corinthians 14 verse 9. And it says, "If you speak to people in words they don't understand, how will they know what you are saying? You might as well be talking into empty space." You know, sometimes what's normal for a Christian is totally not normal for anyone else. We can kind of get stuck in this place of just assuming that people know everything that's going on. And these things that he's talking about in this verse are not necessarily bad things. He's just saying we should be very careful with if doing those things is actually beneficial for the service. So remember Jesus saying that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And we need to understand that as Christians. We don't want to be putting any man-made expectations on our services and needlessly offending people or alienating people because they're not doing one thing. And so let's really think through how we can minimize potential confusion, all to draw people's attention towards Jesus. All right, everyone, so thanks so much for joining us for this first lesson. Remember, the first thing we want to do as worship leaders on a worship team is we want to draw others to Jesus and not to ourselves. So let's take in all of this information. Let's talk about it with our worship teams, and hopefully you guys can just see how important this really is for the health of your worship ministry. And we hope to see you in the next lesson.